Hello everyone, welcome to the Legacy of the Monsterverse reviews, and today we're going to be talking about one of the most long-awaited battles in a long time. And yes, I'm talking about a long-awaited battle that we've been waiting since 60 years to see back on the big screen. I'm talking about Godzilla vs. Kong. The plot to Godzilla vs. Kong is Kong needs to be transported to the core of the Earth, pretty much the Hollow Earth. However, that isn't until the King of the Monsters himself, Godzilla, comes to wreck everything up. It's up to Kong to try and subdue Godzilla, and it's also up to the humans to try and find out what's happening with the two monsters whilst the two monsters start fighting. And that's pretty much it for Godzilla vs. Kong. We have now reached the point where the Monsterverse is becoming the Marvel, the MCU cinematic universe right here with Godzilla vs. Kong, with these two mighty titans fighting on screen. And in my opinion, even though I know some people are saying it's a bit Marvel-wise, this movie, I do not care. I enjoy Godzilla vs. Kong, and we have finally got to see Godzilla and Kong fight after 60 years since 1962. And boy, this is more satisfying of a film. If you're just looking to see Godzilla and Kong fight, you definitely get it in this movie. This movie is especially made for all the Godzilla and Kong fans that want to see these two fight ever since 1962 with King Kong vs. Godzilla, which is also a good film, but this one I think definitely is better. I can remember back when my channel started where we just kept on talking about updates and reacting to trailers to Godzilla vs. Kong.
Oh, that was a really awesome trailer.
Down below.
Which those were good times. But anyways, let's just dive into Godzilla vs. Kong and dive into the history first. Now obviously the idea for Godzilla and Kong crossing over onto the big screen started all the way back in 1962 when Toho got the rights to King Kong because of King Kong vs. Frankenstein, the script that was going to be made by the one and only Willis O'Brien, who did King Kong 1933 and Son of Kong. Was originally going to make a Frankenstein vs. King Kong movie. However, the producer that Willis O'Brien dealt with was kind of a sneaky bastard, and I'm not kidding. He literally sold the movie to Toho without Willis O'Brien knowing. Toho decided to get rid of Frankenstein and use Frankenstein in Frankenstein Conquers the World, which we fought Baragon in that movie, which will be another monster that will appear later in the Godzilla franchise. And instead, Frankenstein will be replaced by Godzilla, a more popular monster in Toho's library, that decided to fight against King Kong. And so, King Kong vs. Godzilla was released on the 11th of August 1962, and it sold 8.7 million tickets. So far, King Kong vs. Godzilla is one of the most successful Godzilla movies in the box office when it comes to the Toho era of Godzilla movies. But funnily enough, Godzilla wasn't actually the main draw in this movie, and was mostly King Kong, which was why Japanese audiences preferred Kong more than Godzilla did. Because Godzilla wasn't really well known as King Kong, and King Kong was more revolutionary than Godzilla was at the time, Toho would crank out another movie with King Kong in it, with King Kong Escapes in 1967, and they were originally going to plan King Kong to fight Ebirah, a new monster. However, Toho lost the license eventually to make King Kong movies, and so they decided to switch King Kong with Godzilla. And this is what led to Godzilla, Ebirah, Horror of the Deep. However, the resurgence of a King Kong vs. Godzilla movie happened in the Heisei era, when King Kong vs. Godzilla was originally going to get remade in 1991. However, Toho still couldn't use the rights to King Kong, so they decided to use Mechanic Kong instead. However, that also fell into the rights as well. This is what led Toho to instead replace King Kong with King Ghidorah. This is what led to King Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah in 1991. However, we go back to 2014 when Gareth Edwards' Godzilla was released in theaters in 2014, and it would be very successful in the box office, and is what will start the Monsterverse with Kong Skull Island in 2017, as well as the sequel to 2014's Godzilla, Godzilla King of the Monsters in 2019. This is what would start the Legendary's Monsterverse films, which will then end up with us eventually seeing Godzilla and Kong fighting on the big screen. It was announced and planned that Godzilla vs. Kong will have a release date on 2020. To direct the film, Adam Wingard was attached to Godzilla vs. Kong as director. Also, funnily enough, Adam Wingard was also going to be planned to direct Kong Skull Island as well, but it never ended up happening. The crew will start filming in Australia and Hong Kong and Brazil and a few other places for the movie. However, There was a problem, however, especially with the release date of 2020. Yep, this was the time when the coronavirus started happening, the whole pandemic, which is what really hurt Godzilla vs. Kong, and it would eventually delay it to 2021. Lots of people were scared because we thought that this movie would never ever get made. However, that isn't until in early 2021, the poster was revealed, and then the official trailer got released to Godzilla vs. Kong, and will be one of the most successful videos on Warner Brothers' YouTube channel. And it will also get a lot of shares and a lot of likes, and Godzilla vs. Kong would be the main blockbuster of 2021. Godzilla vs. Kong will be released on March 25th, 2021, and it will make $470 million at the box office on the $155 to $200 million budget, making it the most successful Monsterverse film in the entire films. And that's speaking of getting released after Godzilla King of the Monsters, which didn't perform well. Critics also liked the film, with it having a 76% on Rotten Tomatoes score, and audiences loved it all around the world. Everyone was talking about Godzilla vs. Kong. However, in recent years, some people do criticize this film a bit. Anyway, let's deep dive into the characters. Now it's time to talk about the human characters to GVK, and to be honest, the human characters I'm kind of mixed on. Well, it's not as bad as King of the Monsters. There are some characters I just found a bit too comic relief and a bit lame. But anyways, let's just start with the human characters. First, starting with Geo, played by Kaylee Hoddle. She pretty much plays a young girl in this movie who's pretty much part of the Iwi tribe on Skull Island that eventually got wiped out by the storm. She is pretty much the heart of the story, as she pretty much carries the story with Kong, because she's not really of a love interest this time around. She's more so one of Kong's mentors and one of Kong's friends, as she communicates with Kong with sign language. In my opinion, her character is really interesting, and I actually quite like her character in the film. She's definitely a character the audience roots for along with Kong. Then we have Eileen Andrews, played by Rebecca Hall, which she's also great in this movie as well. And we also have Nathan Lind, played by Alexander Skarsgård, who with his character I thought was alright in the film as well. I originally thought he was going to be one of the villains in the film, but he's actually not. But he was alright as well. Then we have Maya Simmons, played by Izio Gonzalez, I'm pretty sure that's how you pronounce her name, who plays pretty much one of the villains of the film. Well, she does join Team Kong, but then she turns into the villain in the film because it's revealed that she is the daughter of Walter Simmons, so yeah. And then we have Millie Bobby Brown, who reprises her role as Madison Russell, which her character is alright in this movie. I think, to be honest, this is my opinion, but I do kind of feel like her character is a bit forced in this movie. And I know that probably sounds a bit, that will sound a bit controversial, but anyway, you also have Josh Valentine, played by Julian Dennison, which he's alright in the film. However, I do think he's another comic relief character in the film, and which is kind of annoying, but he was fine, just a bit of comic relief. We also have Bernie Hayes, played by Brian Tyree Henry, which his character was alright. He was mostly the comic relief character in the film, pretty much all the time, and his character I thought was fine. He didn't really play that many good jokes though, like I wasn't really laughing that much, but still though, I reckon he's alright. But then we have Walter Simmons, played by Damien Bichir, I'm pretty sure that's how you pronounce his name. He pretty much plays the main villain of the film. He's pretty much, owns Skynet. I'm not kidding, he owns Skynet. I'm just kidding. It's Apex Cybernetics. And he also has a giant robot Godzilla that's planned to kill Godzilla himself. So, a bit of a corporate villain, alright, I guess. But then we have Serizawa's son, Ren Serizawa, played by Sean O'Geary, which I think he kind of had wasted potential. I mean, he only shows up for the movie for a little bit, and that's pretty much it. Like, there's nothing. He hates Godzilla, I guess. That's really his main motivation. Yeah, nothing really to say. But those are the human characters to GVK. Also, Kyle Chandler shows up again as well in the film. However, it's less screen time. And I guess they're alright, all the human characters. But let's get to the big two. A huge question is, how do you handle Godzilla and Kong in the modern day? Well, it's not that hard. You just make two monsters bash each other up. And oh my goodness, Godzilla and Kong in this movie really do hate each other. Especially Godzilla. Godzilla literally hates Kong's guts. And also Kong is more human compared to Godzilla, which means he has a lot more emotion and carries the story. Anyways, let's deep dive into these two monsters. Starting with technically the main character of the story, or the main monster that we follow, Kong. Kong is technically the main character and the main focus monster of the story. He's pretty much very different from Kong Skull Island, where he has more of a beard, more of an Adam Wingard-like beard. He's more taller, and he's more hairier as well. Kong pretty much is like a normal animal, however he acts more human as well. He's the only monster in the Monsterverse that actually is more humanoid, and is one that the audience definitely roots for. In my opinion, Kong is awesome in this movie. In this movie, he's pretty much not on Skull Island because it's confirmed in canon that Skull Island got wiped out by a storm, and so he's stuck in this base. However, he eventually gets moved out and gets replaced by moving himself into Hollow Earth, which is when we think that maybe more of his kind will be living down there. However, he doesn't end up finding any of his own kind down there until later on into the Monsterverse. Anyway, Kong's connection with Gia as well is at the heart of the film. And if you didn't think Kong was humanoid enough, he actually talks in this movie, in sign language just like Gia. So yeah, Kong can talk, and that's pretty awesome as well. As much as goofy as it sounds, it is true. Kong can talk, that's so awesome. He also, awesomely enough, comes with a Godzilla dorsal plate axe that he uses to fight against Godzilla at the end of the film. And honestly, that is so freaking awesome. I love the axe, it's so awesome in this movie, making Kong a seriously brutal kaiju that you do not want to mess with at all. However, speaking of brutal, let's talk about Godzilla. And oh my god, Godzilla in this movie. He's not the heroic Godzilla that he was in 2019. This time, Godzilla's a bit mixed. He's more so in this movie, I would say a bit of an anti-hero, just a little bit. He kind of reminds me a bit of a villain in this movie, and that's just because he's just full-on attacking people, this time around destroying buildings, just like Godzilla usually does. However, he's more so doing this just because he's going to get replaced by something else that we'll talk about later, which is why he's ending up attacking everything, and is more pissed. So far, the design doesn't look nothing that new. He looks more like the 2019 design. However, this time you can actually fully see Godzilla in full daylight, which is pretty much the finale of the film, and also the ship scene, where you can see Godzilla in all his glory. And Godzilla in this movie, he eventually does be on Kong's side at the end of the film. However, I wouldn't say that he's really that much on his side. Godzilla in this movie, he doesn't really have as much emotion as Kong, but he's still a badass. But what about the fight scenes between Godzilla and Kong? Well, they are amazing in this movie. This is what we've been waiting 60 years for, and oh my god, this movie delivered. This is such an awesome and fun action fight scene between the two. And I mean, the title says a lot. There's around, I would say, like 2 fight scenes, as well as a finale fight between Godzilla and Kong and something else in the film, which that something else we'll mention now. But still though, the fight scenes between Godzilla and Kong are incredible. They're amazing. And this is what the film delivers, and this is what you get. But let's talk about the other monsters. Godzilla and Kong are technically not the only monsters in this movie. We do have one more monster that shows up at the end of the film, like really at the end, but it's still badass in the film. And I'm talking about the one and only Mechagodzilla. Yep, Mechagodzilla is in this movie. And oh my god, Titanic's Mechagodzilla looks amazing. Ever since 1974, 75, and all the other reincarnations of Mechagodzilla throughout the years, Mechagodzilla is an interesting character and is one of the most popular Godzilla monsters. And as a monster lots of people have been wanting to see on the big screen. In 2018, we got to see Mechagodzilla in Ready Player One in a 1-minute short scene, which was what many of us monster fans were thinking. Was Godzilla vs. Kong going to use this Mechagodzilla design for the film? And well, nah, I don't think so. Like, there are many differences between 2021 Mechagodzilla and the Ready Player One Mechagodzilla. For one, his head's a lot bigger, and he looks more like the legendary Godzilla in Godzilla vs. Kong than he does in Ready Player One. And to be honest, Mechagodzilla is awesome. A lot of theory that people had when watching the trailers to Godzilla vs. Kong was if Mechagodzilla was going to disguise himself as legendary Godzilla, which was why we saw Godzilla attacking things. However, I do feel like if they use the design for Godzilla, this is what it would look like, and I'm not kidding, like, this is a meme about it. Oh, it would look so silly. I'm thankful that we didn't have that in the film. Because then we would see a Godzilla that would look like this, and to be honest, like, we would instantly tell it was Mechagodzilla. But still though, I think Mechagodzilla is an awesome addition, and is a badass villain to be introduced into the final parts of Godzilla vs. Kong, where Godzilla and Kong need to team up to try and face against Mechagodzilla. Mechagodzilla was made by Apex Cybernetics, which was supposed to be a robot to face off and kill Godzilla, and eventually this leads to Mechagodzilla's death by Kong. Also, funnily enough, Mechagodzilla is also controlled by one of the skulls of Ghidorah, specifically Kevin, I'm pretty sure, which, that's pretty awesome that King Ghidorah technically, is reborn alive again, this time in a robotic monster. But Mechagodzilla isn't also the only monster. We also have the Skullcrawler, which returns back again, this time with a different color scheme, and also gets literally abrillated by Mechagodzilla. I'm not too sure if that's a word that I just said just then, but still though, he's not on screen too much. But we also get to see Skullcrawler eggs as well that Apex have been sneaking from Skull Island. We also have here the Warbat, which is this snake-like serpent creature which fights Kong, which is awesome as well. We also get to see these little things, or these Hellhawk guys. They are, they're called Hellhawks that are in the Hollow Earth. They look kind of funny looking, to be honest. That's pretty funny. But we also get Ghidorah's skull, which I did mention in the film. Ghidorah's skull returns again ever since the post-credit scene with King of the Monsters, which I'm pretty sure that is supposed to be the skull of that Ghidorah. But all these monsters don't compare against Titanus Doug. All in all, Doug is the best part about this movie and is the best monster in the franchise in my own opinion. The best parts about Godzilla vs. Kong, well, there are a lot of good parts about the film, but I think the main premise of it is probably the best part of the film. That is Godzilla and Kong fighting, and, I mean, the title promises it. I guess the film is pretty much the entirety of Godzilla and Kong fighting, and it is amazing. It is amazing. It's a visually amazing spectacle. And, well, seeing Godzilla and Kong fighting is just absolutely amazing. I never thought in 50 years that I'll see these two titans fight again on the big screen. I also really enjoy Kong as a character. Kong is a very emotionally attachable character compared to all the other monsters, which I think is what makes his character definitely a lot stronger than some of the other monsters in the film. Plus, his connections to Gia is also the best parts about the film as well. And hell, even Kong's axes are amazing. I mean, that's really awesome. I really want to see more of this axe, maybe in the timeline with Origins, if we see more Kongs with these kinds of axes. That would have been so cool. Anyway, I also love Godzilla in this movie. I like how devastating of Godzilla is more in this movie than compared to some of the other Monsterverse movies. This time, he's more of a force to be reckoned with. I also do like lots of the characters in the film. I especially like Gia as well as a character. And she's definitely a strong point of the movie. Also, Rebecca Hall's character is also pretty good in this movie as well. But the one that steals the show as well is Mechagodzilla. Definitely a strong, badass villain in the Monsterverse. I also really like how he has, connections to Ghidorah as well. I know lots of people complain a bit about the design, but in my opinion, the design's perfect. I think it totally matches the Titanus Godzilla well as a robotic form. I especially even like the final fight scene with Godzilla and Kong teaming up together to stop Mechagodzilla. I mean, that scene was just badass awesome. One of the best moments in the Monsterverse. Also, I like Hollow Earth. I know lots of people don't, and especially hear lots of people saying that Hollow Earth is too silly, and especially a place with, the monsters, they look kind of like action figures in Hollow Earth. But in my opinion, this is where the Titans are supposed to live, so they're supposed to look like action figures. So I enjoyed Hollow Earth, and I can't wait to see it in GXK. But the one that steals the show, in my opinion, is Titanus Doug. I think out of all the monsters, nothing can stand a chance against Doug. I mean, Doug is definitely my favorite kaiju or monster in the Monsterverse. Anyway, let's talk about the things I didn't like. Whilst Godzilla vs. Kong is an entertaining, fun movie where you just get to see Godzilla and Kong fight for a bit of escapism, there are some criticisms to the movie, particularly Team Godzilla. In my opinion, Team Godzilla is fine. It's just that some of the characters and the bit of development around the areas, and especially the story between them, is a bit complicated. Some of the characters' performance are alright, but it's just that some characters are just comedy relief or annoying side characters. I think one thing that Team Kong definitely nails with it is gonna have good actors and a good story behind what they're doing with Kong. But with Team Godzilla, it's just like, oh, we gotta stop this evil threat for, making Godzilla destroy things. Speaking of evil threat, I do kind of think the Apex cybernetics guy, and especially the Apex villains of the film, kind of were wasted potential. Besides Mechagodzilla with them, there really was nothing special about them. They just kind of were these corporate greed suit guys, which we have seen countless times in other movies, so felt like there wasn't really anything new to his character, but that's pretty much it. Now, we're going to jump to the conclusion. The fight scenes in Godzilla vs. Kong are visually amazing. I especially love the Hong Kong battle, that scene. It's just amazing. It's really realmy and it's full of bright colors and everything. I reckon the Hong Kong battle scene might be the best battle scene and the standout scene in the entire movie. The directing by Adam Wingard is also great in this movie. However, I do feel like there are some camera shaking areas, but I'm guessing it's just because of the fight scenes and stuff. But it's not everywhere, and at least you do get to see the battle in full, and it is visually amazing. It's kind of on the same level as Godzilla King of the Monsters a lot. However, King of the Monsters was more grounded and more visually amazing, but Godzilla vs. Kong is also grounded and visually amazing, but not too grounded. But I'm just absolutely amazed by this movie and seeing these two giants from the Beast from the East and the Beast from the West finally clash. And this is my thoughts on Godzilla vs. Kong. In my own opinion, Godzilla vs. Kong, while it's not a great film, I do agree there is some silly moments, and I do agree that, the humans could be worked on a bit more, and it's not -1 level. I don't care. I love Godzilla vs. Kong. It's entertaining as hell, and this is a battle we've been waiting since 1962, so I'm not complaining. I give this film around an 8 out of 10. Honestly, Godzilla vs. Kong, it gives you what you promised. Godzilla and Kong fighting, and it's in the title there, and this is what you get, and that is amazing. Honestly, this is a popcorn movie that I definitely recommend to all Godzilla and Kong fans. Anyways, I will see you all next week, as today we'll dive deep into Monarch with Monarch, Legacy of the Monsters. Yep, this will be a bit longer. I'll see you then.